curious to see how that's going to inform how I plan for learning and how I facilitate learning is this. So again, I'm hoping to gain experience, I guess, and maybe in our practicums or maybe in a course, but basically learning how to be effective and efficient in my formative assessment, and basically learning how to take that and then have that inform how I do my planning. So that's what I'm basically hoping to learn about. Assessment is not necessarily how to evaluate and come up with rubrics and stuff like that. I'm feeling relatively competent in that, especially since we've spent more time this year looking at what the curricular outcomes are. I feel confident that I can find it online. I can look what my outcomes need to be, and then I can plan something around that, or I can plan an assessment around that basically says, yes, you achieved these outcomes, or you didn't, present, not present, whatever. But what I'm more curious is how to create effective formative assessment that will inform my facilitation, inform how I facilitate learning and how I plan, how I do my lesson planning, how I inspire kids, how I motivate them, how I keep them challenged without it being too hard. Things like that is what I'm hoping to learn third year. Number 4 is classroom environment. This one is interesting. I don't know. I'm having trouble kind of pinpointing specific things that we learned this semester. Again, I'm feeling our motivation class. We discussed this a little bit, and kind of the thing like the Montessori school and different things like that. And I definitely have gained personally a lot of. I'm getting a clearer picture, I guess, of what I want my classroom to look like. Jody was able to indoctrinate me this year on the importance of literacy, and so I definitely, especially at early education, I want a room that's set up around literacy and art and different things like that. And so it's tough in that sense. Another thing that we learned in Kevin's class, in the Aboriginal issues class, was just gain some experience doing some school tours and stuff like that, and with Aboriginal. With a band school and with Peyotes, which is like it's not a charter school. It's under the Calgary Board of Education, but it's almost exclusively First Nations, and they are doing an amazing job of using their classroom environment to, I guess, reinforce their school ecology. It's I can't think of a school that I've walked into, maybe other than the Calgary Science School, but even there, it's not as good as it was at Peyotes, where there's the classroom environment is just like so in step with what the school's ecology is, what they stand for. Everywhere you look, there's consistency as far as what their values are, what their goals are, what they're working on, what they're trying to stop, bullying, things like that. And I definitely I liked what I saw there, as far as it was obvious what their intentions and their goals were by walking into classrooms. And so I look at that with my own classroom, and I'm still learning on that. And there's the stuff that we talked about in I think it was in year 1, in one of those early classes, where we talked about too much light and stuff like that. I'm not overly concerned with that, because I don't know how much control you have over that. But moving on, that's another tough one for me. Moving on, in my third year, I'm hoping, I guess, to see how classroom environment, I would say, affects kids. I'm really looking forward to the practicum, and having a chunk of time where we're in a classroom and we see the day in, day out functions of that, and to see if a kid needs to get separated from the group and his desk is moved, or her desk is moved somewhere else in the room, how does that affect the dynamic of the classroom, and things like that, and just to hopefully make some personal notes and mental notes within that of how doing things affects the flow of the classroom, the feel, and the environment. That's a tough one for me, so maybe you can give me some advice on that, Norm. Professional responsibilities and relationships. This has definitely been an informative year on that stuff. It's teaching is becoming tougher, I think, and more difficult. Like we talked about early on in the technology class, those teachers who had students videotape them on a bad day and now they're not going to teach ever again. And so I think that's definitely something to keep in the back of our minds as we move forward, is this concept of self-control, and be aware that someone's always watching. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it can be dangerous if things are taken out of context or misinterpreted, but it just is it's a reminder and a strong warning as far as to be very careful what comes out of your mouth. And I think we're perhaps hypersensitive to it and scared of it now, because again, in my school placement, some of the things that the phys ed teacher at the science school said to some of those kids, I was like, oh, you can't say that. But it was working out fine for him, and not that he was abusive or anything like that, but there was just an example was a kid had his hat taken away up on the stage, and he's whining to me about how he couldn't get his hat back, and Dean was just like, you're bigger than him, go take it back. And I was like, supporting violence. But it's, the kids know not to be respectful and stuff like that. And so I think there's just this whole thing in being safe when I run the basketball camps with NBC in the summer, and we have that talk with my staff every summer of this whole thing of what their professional responsibilities are, and this whole concept of you got to protect yourself. And I guess I learned a little bit more this year on how to protect myself as a teacher, as a professional. Things like we talked about in Kevin's Aboriginal class today. In fact, a couple of teachers almost got charged under bullying laws because they had a group of students that they were working with that they sent out a group email to, and that group email had a list of all the students' emails, and students were able to take that list and then bully kids using that cyberly. And the RCMP actually came in. Kevin was the principal at the time, and they, just so you know, we're going up to basically arrest and charge these two teachers for this. And so it's just this whole thing of be careful, blind carbon copy I learned about today, I guess. Third year, again, this is something that I'm looking forward to seeing it fleshed out. I'm looking forward, as you can tell from almost all my examples, they relate to looking forward to the practicum. I'm looking forward to getting into the school and seeing consistently, daily, on a day-to-day basis, how all these things work in current teachers. I'm excited to learn from them. I'm excited to observe a classroom and be in a classroom all the time and gain experience in these areas. As far as professional responsibilities and relationships go, just this whole thing of being careful, things like you never want to put yourself in a situation where it's your word against a student's word, because that's just not a good situation to be in, right? And yeah, so I think that's a big part of it. And moving on, I'm really excited for our practicums next year and the learning that's going to happen there. I'm excited to have more hands-on and to start working out these theories and all this discussion and in-class stuff that we've had over the years. Sorry I went a little long, over 10 minutes. Sorry, Norm, but it was great, and see you guys tomorrow.